Hey, hello everybody. It's Dr. Kam Yuen. I was asked to from Facebook that there are a bunch of relationship requests that I would look it over and answer from my insight, right? So I'm not going to give you my opinion. People have questions, and those questions has to be answered, right? So, and again, to remind you, you want to improve your feeling, perception, intuition, that establish your insight, and you combine that with your telepathic communication and physical intelligence and physical awareness. So that make up the hexagon of knowing what's going on in your physical self and your physical surroundings. So let's say someone have a question about relationship with what a partner can't relate to. The partner can't relate to his son or her son. The partner even think that her son feeling rejection for him. All right, so the situation is that we always speak about this three-way relationship. And when there's an unevenness there, there would be a constant struggle. And there's no specific reason. In fact, the reason has to be made up for that constant struggle, the unevenness. So you and your son and your partner, each one have to be even with each other. Then when you look at the internal dynamic, that should be strong too. And it isn't strong. And the external boundary is not strong. So you heard me say about the triad. And our triad had to be strong. So that way, good or bad things come from the outside will not bring up conflicts and question about this relationship. So there's not any reason, causes, or source of that except the weakness or the unevenness and that triad not being strong it ought to be. So let's say Terry have been done with intimate relationship for years and like it that way. Well, it gets to the point that it's not that important you have intimate relationship or don't have intimate relationship. So you want to be strongly neutral about it. So when you have it, fine. You don't, that's fine. And that kind of there's a weakness there. And of course, you have intimate relationship in the past, the cumulative effect of it, going back, for hundreds, even thousands of years, including your ancestors' experiences that pass it on to you. And that weakness is there, and you want to strengthen the cumulative effect of relationship from the past. So, see, intimate relationship doesn't have to continue forever, and it doesn't have to not having it. So, actually, when you get to a certain age, people should allow you or you allow others to have more independence, and that would be better for everybody. Right? So, and that is not my opinion, right? It seems like my opinion, but it's just from my experience, right? So, question, why somebody always feel on a disadvantage in couple relationship now and in the past? Well, the past is always a cumulative effect, and that's always worse than the future. And when you say now, you don't really mean now, because now is always going into the future. So we should aware of the now, and you have a triad, past, present, and future. Present is now, but then now is always moving into the future. And of course, the future will be affected by the cumulative effect of the past. So most people, the past experience is like 1,000,000 times stronger than the anticipated experience into the future. So of course you will delete particularly the negative, well, even a positive. You want to be neutral with your experience. So you want to delete positive, not positive, negative, not negative, and be strongly neutral in all the effect from the past. And then the future would be easier to be even with your past. So in the future, any negative expectation of the future, you definitely want to be strong with them and delete the effects of them, and then strengthen your central nervous system to reset yourself to the changes. And that's how things will become better for you. Of course, this is it's a simple approach, and it's not something you kind of used to. Okay, so the same person also asks, if there's an infidelity, could it be possible to solve it and go on with the relationship with good terms? Of course. So if you're looking at that situation, infidelity, and you could trace it back to the past life experiences, or the ancestors who experienced those as spiritual experiences, or experienced those as karmas or severe karma that became curses. And looking at that situation, you want a negative spiritual experience, karmas and curses. Now that forms a triad, and that's a weak triad for pretty much close to the whole humanity, right? So it's like that happened to everybody, right? So unless you sort through the effect, just because it happened to everyone across the board doesn't mean we have to accept it, right? So you're just going to be different. Of course, being different among the masses is going to look at you in a way that they may not even like you, right? Because of that. Of course, you can resolve it, right? So, and there would be karmas of infidelity and also negative experiences. So again, you want to ensure the spiritual experience or negative spiritual experiences and karmas and curses are even with each other and form a strong triad. Okay, so Marcus want to sustain long-term marriages and relationship. Well, if you want that, you definitely, the two things you brought up, marriage and relationship, well, you want those two things to be even with each other on the same level of strength or energy, right? Otherwise, the unevenness make the marriage struggle with your relationship struggle with your marriage, and also long-term, that's the third component. So you want the long-term, and then marriage and relationship, each one would be even with each other. And then when you think about the triad, that's a weakness there, right? So when that's a weakness in a triad, you'd be struggling with anything coming from the outside, right? So that triad, internal dynamic, the internal boundary, external boundary, have to maintain its stability, balance, and center, and the vertices of the triad have to be even with each other. Then you could put up with good or bad days, right? Doesn't matter. The worst thing that could happen would actually improve the marriage or improve that long term that you're asking for in that relationship. Well, that's my answer for it, right? So, okay. So then, says you practice your method and feeling strong, content, and happy being alone. Okay. So what bothers her is people perception or project thought about her and not being in a relationship. I've been told, well, this must be healing stuff that must not work if you're alone. Right? So, all right. So how could you work on that perception? Right now, that perception. Now, you also the weakness, is it your weakness or other people's weakness? So when you make a comparison, it really comes from you. In another, situation or another person, it could be coming from outside or family members, but in your case, it's really coming from you. Right? So your perception, you actually, if you look at it, you actually have a karma of messing up people's perception on purpose. Right? That's a karma, but it's not a serious karma, like cutting somebody's throat or something. Right? So this is you actually weaken other people's perception. Then you kind of you've done that on purpose. So you want to resolve that karma of causing people to not have perception. Okay, so now their thoughts. See, every time someone projects thoughts, it would be just a mental thought, right? So, and it triggers all your experiences, including all your past life experiences, your family members' experiences of that mental thinking that bring up conflicts and confusion. That's always happened when the mind get into our life, and of course we're so used to using our mind without using it, we just feel like we're not even human anymore or something, or we're out of touch. But actually your physical intelligence is always in touch with what it's supposed to be, good or bad, and there's no such thing as good or bad. There's no judgment there with your physical intelligence. That's really what you want to experience in this part of your life, because you already experienced the other part of your life using your mind and actually having conflict with others, including yourself. And so if you have conflict, you're not going to have a good relationship, right? So you always question about your relationship when you have conflict or the unevenness with each other, and communicating with each other with your minds instead of activating the physical intelligence, that you communicate more telepathically, without judgment, without criticism, without any blame. Of course, if you have them, you have to remove them, otherwise it's always hanging there. All right, so now looking at Joanna, okay, so you wonder why there's so many superficial relationships these days, and what stops people from engaging on a deeper level. Right, so superficial and deep have to be even with each other. Since you brought that up, there's an unevenness there. So when people have a superficial relationship, they want a deep one. When they have a deep one, they want a little more superficial. So that's kind of like it's always looking for the opposite. I don't mean looking for it, but the opposite pops up. Right? If you're in a deep relationship, then you question about what happened to the superficial ones. And when you're in a superficial relationship, then you question about what happened to the deeper level relationship. So, and it's common more these days. It's more common because people are so uneven with each other. Their unevenness generate the weakness, that people struggling with their weakness with each other, and that's what they question about, right? So they make up reasons instead of they're looking for the reasons. There's no reason except the weakness. Of course, there would be reason, but you have to strengthen that triad first, and then using your physical intelligence, you will connect with the reason and the cause as the source of the problem, and they connect back to you. So, and you talk about you and your young daughter would like to have some meaningful friendship, but people are too busy to connect. There's something in you and your daughter that's disable you to see what you do wrong, right? There's no such thing wrong. The wrongness is the unevenness, right? So you want to remove wrong, not wrong, right, not right, right? So, and consider yourself wrong is like blaming yourself, and that comes from your mind, right? So, and again, you and your daughter are not even with each other. So, when I say even, it's like your level of energy with each other should be even, okay? Not one over dominating the other one, right? Or taking, taking places or taking turns in dominating each other. So when it's even, there's no energy going that direction, and everything was smoothed out. Their relationship still have to come from central nervous system to central nervous system, not mind to mind, and sometimes the central nervous system creep in there and actually when it creep in there a little bit at a time or a little bit, it just causes the situation to be even more confused, and that's when relationships kind of have no communication. Right? So communication should always be telepathic or coming from your central nervous system. So when you communicate with your mind, you actually bring up more questions, and there's never any answers because there's too many choices, and it's difficult to pinpoint the right choice that's suitable for you in that giving situation or giving time. All right, so now Myrta want to have a strong relationship with herself and her children. She also wonder what is her problem with relationship. Where's the man is younger than women. I don't care in general, but when it hits home, you need to have a neutral, healthy look at instead of bias war, right? So the bias outlook, again, is the unevenness of the mind, and we constantly, use our mind, especially when we involve with education, right? So we always think that you have to improve your student's mind, or you have to improve your mind with your students, and the student give you their mind experiences, particularly when they are in college and no longer in high school, right? High school, the students still kind of connected more strongly with their physical intelligence, even though it's not all there, but it's still stronger than when they get into college. That's when everyone use their mind in that university or college setting. Even if the student is not using their mind, but the rooms and the campus have captured the mental energy there that will make everyone confused and use their mind and try to memorize things. So now, strong relationship with yourself, is already there, and your relationship with your children is weaker than your relationship with yourself. So you want to make it even, energy-wise, right? So when they are even, then there's no unevenness make you bring up things that you think you have to be struggling with, right? You're struggling with the unevenness, and you make up the reason why you're struggling, right? So, and when you make up the reason of struggling, or the cause of your struggling, or the source of it, it was just something you made up yourself. You didn't use your insight to pinpoint what they are. So, and when you have that evenness within yourself, then whatever affects you would be so much easier for you to connect with, and also for it connect with you. It would let you know in a matter of a milliseconds or a second or so that you would know what's going on, right? So, so far as aging, a man is younger than a woman, and it's really aging unevenness, right? So it's not gender unevenness; it's more of aging. So you want to ensure that aging would be even. You with another person's age, and the other person, you want to ensure the other person's their level of aging would be even, right? So you may be even with your aging, with your experience, using your insight, you are even out your aging, different decade aging, right? So the rest of the population is like every decade they have a different effect on them, right? So, but what you want to do is that each decade should be even with the previous decade or to the new decade. So all the decades should be even. So it's not just in this lifetime. People have been exposed to unevenness of decades in other lifetimes, and those have to be even out. There will be less question about it. So it's always good to have less question, and I don't mean suppress it to the point that you have less question or turn yourself off, right? So you don't need to have a neutral, healthy look at it. You just stay neutral. You have the answer, right? So neutral, healthy look. Just those three things should be even for you. They're not even. Right? So when they're not even, then there's no bit of struggling with the unevenness again. So evenness is really where it's at. It's so simple, right? If every cell in your body is even, then you're not going to have disease that start on a cellular level, right? And you will activate your cellular intelligence outside your central nervous system as well. Of course, when you're not aware that your central nervous system has to be activated, its intelligence first before you strengthen the intelligence of the cells in your body. Of course, you could do that, but it's not going to be as supportive if you want your body cells to have more intelligence. Well, they have to be supported by the central nervous system, and the central nervous system have to communicate with the cells, and the cell have to communicate back. So that's the relationship, right? So if you have your cells relating to each other in a good way, then I don't mean good, I mean in a way that it's meant to be strong in relating back and forth to each other, then relationship, you're not going to question about the interpersonal relationship. They're always going to be good, right? So, and if you want to pursue it to be more intimate, you could if you choose to, right? And if you don't choose to, then it'd be okay too. There's no question, that something is not right, right? All right, so now, Joshua, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Your relationship with the family of your husband, that means your in-laws, right? And his relationship with your family, right, are bad, no matter what, right? So, reason and source of this problem, right? So, now everyone would have different reasons and source of in-laws or members of family having conflict with each other. Okay, so now think about you and him, and you're weaker than your husband, right? In comparison, it doesn't mean that you're worse than him. You just have things that have to straighten out first in you before you try to straighten out your husband. I don't mean straighten out, but you know what I mean. So you have the weakness. That means you have to look at you first, right? So we could bring your weakness up to the same level of strength as your husband, but you still would have to look at yourself as the leading weakness, and if you don't know what it is, it would be non-physical, right? So you have a choice, physical, non-physical. Well, if you only have two choices, it's easy to make a choice right? But if you use your mind, you have countless choices. But using your physical intelligence, it's like a computer. It's just 1 and 0. That's it. And it's only two choices, right? It's a 1 or a 0, or a bunch of ones and a bunch of zeros, interrelating with each other. So looking at your situation is non-physical, it would be spiritual. So then you take a step more specific when it's non-physical. You only have two choices too, right? It's a spiritual or mental, right? So it's really spiritual. So spiritual is weaker than mental, so you have to look at the spiritual side of you. Now, spiritual would be experiences or karmas and curses in general. So this would be karma, right? So you and your husband, there's karma effect, and not direct from you and him, or him and you. Now, if you have weakness there with each other, that would be a direct karma, right? So you have indirect karma. So indirect karma would be your children and his ancestors. So it start off your children of other lifetime and his ancestors. They have a conflict with each other, right? So your children actually have karma with his ancestors. It's like your children kind of cheat his ancestor out of money, right? So you resolve that, right? So if you don't resolve that karma, there will always have conflict. If you have children with each other, then it kind of bring out the conflict even more, right? So now that's been, you could say, pacified, right? That's been even out. And then, and your process is further, there's still indirect karma, right? So we just resolve one indirect karma. The next one would be coming from him to you, his ancestor, and your ancestors. So the weakness indicate his ancestor and your ancestor have weakness with each other. We just don't know what it is, but we know they have karma or negative spiritual experiences or even curses. So his ancestor and your ancestor, that his ancestor owe your ancestor karmically, okay? It's like his ancestor took over some property from your ancestor. The property is like almost taking the country away, right? So not just a house, right? So his ancestor kind of took the country of your ancestors. So that's a strong indirect karma, right? So if it's just a house, well, it's not good, but it's not as bad of, taking over the whole country, right? So once you identify that, of course, you want to strengthen it for resolution, right? So resolve the karma. So you could give it a number now. How many reasons? 1 million reasons affecting your ancestor, 1,000,000%. And once you recognize the numbers, you just resolve themselves. So unless there's no energy there, you don't need to put any energy there, right? And then, and it tells the situation, there's still not so much indirect karma, but partial indirect karma. So you don't have indirect karma, you have indirect karma, that's been resolved, those two. Now you have partial and direct karma coming from you to your husband, family, okay? So from you to him, then would be a direct karma. So it's really you to your ancestors, to your husband's family. It doesn't have to be this family, but it is you and your husband's family, and you were not even married, right? So it in those lifetime, right? So you could have been married, but it doesn't seem like you were, because there's no weakness to indicate what the experience would be, right? So using the weakness quickly, you actually get all the answers, right? How else you get the answers, right? So you want to improve your feeling, perception, intuition to give you the insight. Insight is not something you develop. You just have to be strong with all three of those choices I mentioned, or those elements, and each one had to be even. The triad had to be strong, as always, the triad. So let's get back to the situation is that you have a partial and direct karma with your husband's siblings, especially your husband's sister. It's that you and your husband's sister in another lifetime, you just don't see eye to eye. You are in direct competition. Well, not in sports, but in life. So we have to resolve your karma to your husband's sister in the other lifetime, and then he has partial and direct karma that he had weakness to your brothers in other lifetime. It's like he want to kill your brothers off, right? So, and it didn't look like he did. So there's no indication that he killed your brother, but he wanted to, right? So he wanted to. It's still a karma, right? So it's not as bad as killing them off, right? So that's been resolved, right? So, and looking at further, it doesn't seem to be any, okay? Anymore. So now when you think about you two are even with each other, when you are even with each other, you definitely have less argument and debates, right? The unevenness make people, kind of argue with each other and make up reason why they can't stand each other to a certain extent, right? So when they're even, they really have nothing to say, but it may be boring if you're not used to it. But you could get used to that, right? So you will have a better intimate relationship that you actually communicate with each other so much better without talking for long periods of time, right? You say a few words, you're already in sync with each other, right? And there would be no misunderstanding, right? Misunderstanding comes from using too much of the mind, right? All right, now, again, looking at his family and your family, the members of it. So when you think about the members of the family, and you don't have to know the specific numbers. Well, let's say you put them in a relationship circle, and it's like there's unevenness there many times over. So once you recognize that, all the members would even each other out. It doesn't matter. They have different education, finances. It's just the basic energy you have to be even with each other. So you make that even. Once you recognize the unevenness, you make it even. And then the internal boundary you share with each other, that kind of not holding together, right? So that's a weakness there. Indicate that the internal dynamic, the boundaries are not strong in holding the situation together. But then the internal dynamic is already strong, so there's no question about that. There's no weakness there. But then the external boundary is weak, so you have to indicate that weakness and strengthen it. And then the internal dynamic goes weak. So in this particular case, it's a little different. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, the internal dynamic goes weak first. But in this case, I said it is not given. It has to follow the exact sequence. The sequence would be different. Right? You have 3 choices. You could have different sequence of these 3 choices. So in this case, the internal dynamic, the external. I'm sorry, not dynamic. The internal boundary, external boundary. Both boundaries are weak. So it's hard for us to hold each other together. And then the internal dynamic is weak. So there's 3 weaknesses kind of make the situation more struggling with each other. And you could take a step now. Why there's reasons here. Not reason. I mean, there's weaknesses here, and the reason for it would be the karma we mentioned. So we already resolved those, right? So, secondly, would be there's also anticipation these karma will never be resolved. Okay. Well, when people don't know this method, you will never resolve the karma. Right? So when you don't resolve the karma, you will continue to live with the karma, and you will act it out the same way. Of the karma, or you just acted out just the opposite in a few other ways, or a little bit of each, right? The same direct or indirect responding to it. So it depends on other family members too, and also past life experiences. So looking at that situation, when that family members of 2 families in this relationship circle stays solid, then there would be no argument or no reason made up because of the weakness that's not recognized, right? So when these 3 things or these 3 weaknesses were not strengthened, that's like a million problems. And now that they've been strengthened to be stabilized, then it's really down to 0 minus infinity, right? So they couldn't even find a problem with each other, even they looked for it. Where before, the problem is all over the place, right? So, okay, so that's that would make the improvement there. So now you see how things work, right? When you do it this way, you will resolve any relationship. You'll be a relationship expert, right? If you wanted to, right? And why not, right? So it could be professional relationship, could be romantic relationship. You process this way. Of course, you may need some more prompting and experience, so you have to take more classes or something, right? So do something, or just connect with these experiences like we're doing right now. The more you connect with it, the more you could do it. And when you do it, you could do it professionally, and you could change individuals, you could change family members, you could change your friends or classmates, even your teachers, and you've changed the world, right? That's how we're going to improve the world, right? We can't talk to each other and try to improve it. Everybody be arguing with each other, right? So, and you want to use your mind to connect with other people's mind, then you would be in constant conflict with each other. So just be strong with your central nervous system, and just make the other person strong, right? It takes you a millisecond. It's just like thinking nicely of another person, except you just more specifically strengthen their central nervous system. It's just like you wish they were stronger, right, or in their body. So you might as well be more specific and strengthen the central nervous system, because that's what everything is, we could say, governed by. Everything they do is governed by the central nervous system, not their mind, right? And everything that happened around them, the physical surrounding, you still have things to say from the central nervous system. The central nervous system could change the physical surroundings. The physical surrounding will not affect you as much if your central nervous system is connected with it. And your central nervous system connect with your physical surroundings, you automatically and naturally receive instinctively the answers, right? You're not going to search for it in your whole life. All right, so that's relationship in a nutshell, right? So, and I feel very privileged for your questions, and it's great that I finally got to the experience that I could answer any question and direct you to resolve any problems, right? These are your questions, these are your problems. I'm just getting the answers and the solution from you, right? And I didn't pick it up out of the air, out of thin air, right? It's come from you. And I don't make it up. The weakness give me the answer, and that's how each one of you should be moving toward. And that actually gives you that insight and that physical knowing about yourself, right? To know thyself, that's kind of like a cliche, right? And not just saying it, you actually experience it and improve upon it, right? The more you experience it, the more you will improve on it, then you will improve others. So when you improve others, you are improving yourself. So when you're even with each other, you're not going to pick on them, right? So that's what we could do for children, so they don't have to pick on each other. So look at my, looking for my webinar that I'm going to do with children in Mexico. That's fundraising for them. So look for my blog on it, and you may want to be exposed to it. Okay, so it's a fundraiser, so it doesn't cost that much money. So if you still have a question about money, that should also look at that you have no question about it. You're surrounded by money, right? So anyway, so again, thank you so much, and be well.